And here we go. So today we have myself, Brian, and a friend of Brian, who is now a new friend of mine, Bill Konigsberg. How are you, Bill?
I'm very well. It's so nice to be with you.
Good. So Brian, as usual, do you want to introduce Bill and sort of give us a background in terms of how you met and how we got to be here today?
Thanks, Haley. Yes, Bill and I met through Facebook, if I'm right, Bill. You reached out to me and we connected when you came to Fort Lauderdale. We got together and had a good face-to-face, and then Bill's now been a guest in our home and will be again. But Bill is a very successful author of young adult literature in which the protagonist is gay. He also has a new book out that has been optioned for film or series by Netflix, if I'm correct.
Amazon Prime.
Even better. And the book is called The Bridge. And it's written in 3 sections about 2 people who meet on a bridge, young people, and both are there to take their own lives. And Bill sets us up for what would happen if one jumped and the other didn't, or both jumped or the other jumped. And he helps people understand the impact of suicide on the family and survivors. So well done, Bill. It was published by Scholastic, and they made it their #1 book of the year to promote, which is thrilling.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
The question though, Bill, is will you be happy without the movie?
Exactly. How apropos. I'll tell you, we have to talk about that. I'll just tell you the update is on Friday. I got from the screenwriter last Friday the outline for the pilot episode, because it's going to be a limited series if it's made.
Yep.
It was thrilling to see what he did. He did such a good job.
Did he?
I'm very excited. But that said, I certainly have to go into this experience being okay either way, because mostly these things don't get made. So that's where we stand, and it's hard.
It's very hard, and that's wisdom, though. If you prepare yourself now for the possibility of it not happening,
yes,
and all of the things people have told you it will mean if it happens, to let go of all of that and be just really happy the book has been published and it's in the hands of people, and onward and upward.
Onward and upward. And I think that legacy is sort of a tough spiritual issue in some ways. The idea of like, what are we leaving behind? And in the end, I think we have to be enough with the work, that the work has to be the thing, that simply doing the work, being engaged in whatever it is that we're being engaged in has to be enough. And I find that very hard. I really do. I know I can say it. It's easier to say than to believe, though.
I think it gets easier as you get older, Bill, because you've had more experiences of letdown and survived them and seen the positive side of what happened next, including just friendships ending, that you thought were going to last forever.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think the paradox of legacy is that when we think of that word and how it makes us feel, it feels like it's this sort of thing that is out there and sort of looking back, but also in the future, when legacy really is all about how present you are being in the moment, how open you are being to whatever the outcome is. I'm going to be okay. Whatever the outcome is, it's going to be the best outcome. And again, much easier said than done, because I can sit here and be very sort of grateful and focused on my work, and very grateful that I am busy, and very grateful that I am touching so many people. And I can get so caught up in that and start thinking, oh my God, this is fantastic. Oh, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, what if it's not like this next week? And I think it's a really tough, from a spiritual perspective, to be able to live it every single day and to be consistent at it.
and realize that like our light, which is a prism really, rather than one single candle, that we have legacies that we're not even conscious of. For instance, my grandnieces and nephews don't know anything about what I've written, what I've done. My legacy to them is being a really good uncle, you know, to be somebody who they'll remember and maybe model in the relationships they have with nieces and grandnieces and nephews. Beyond what I think is what I'm, you know, the most important thing I'm leaving behind is the impression that we leave on people, including, you know, the person who's bagging groceries.
Yes, I mean, since I'm here with Brian and we're talking about legacy and what you just said, I have to add, I mean, your legacy, aside from what you've written, is personal with me. I mean, the reason that I contacted you on Facebook was that I had read something you wrote 30 years prior, or actually 40 years prior, and it changed my life. And that is legacy. I don't think it's something that we can. I think your idea, Haley, that we have to be mindful and stay in the moment is really the key. But it doesn't change the fact that that's legacy. And everybody can feel empowered to have that legacy in one way or another.
Everybody does have a legacy. They're not always good.
Right.
You know, Donald Trump has a legacy.
Big legacy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to take us there, but because dark smoke started to form around my head. But you know, we're not aware all the time of what legacy we have. I mean, even my comment just then of Donald Trump mentioning his name, if somebody who's watching this one day happens to be somebody who admired him, I've lost a piece of my legacy, or I've created a different image with that person because of my comment. Everything comes out of our mouth, everything we do. You know, each moment of our life is a possible, there's an echo of who we are throughout history.
Yes.
Yeah. A phrase that has become very real to me over the last 2 months is including in my practice probably 2-3 times a day, saying to myself, I honor all that I have been, I honor all that I am, and I honor all that I am going to be. Because I think being able to recognize that everything that you have done up until this moment means something, is part of that legacy that you are still trying to build, is that legacy in the future. And even all that I have been includes all of those past lives, whatever they might have been.
I had a coffee, as I often do with people I don't know, last week, and one of the men who said he was much older than me, he was 76, and I said, you would have been a senior and I would have been a freshman. You know, we kind of dated. They're not much older than me, but he talked a lot about the difficulties of the past, his past, and his much younger partner was sitting with us, and I said, you know, this is not a new statement, but you're never going to be younger than you are at this moment. You have your whole life ahead of you. You don't need to live out the drama of your mother. You know, it doesn't need to be your story for the rest of your life. Looking for people who haven't heard it yet. You know, you are the way you are because my mother, you know, was abusive or mentally ill or whatever. Okay, you know, she was. Lots of us have experiences that weren't ideal, but helped make us who we are. Now, where are you going? What are you doing now? You know, that's creative and truly reflects that incredible light you have inside of you. That
honors that light.
Yeah, the light, which the Amanda Gorman spoke about, you know, in her poem yesterday at the inauguration, the light. And I use that all the time in my writing. And you know, we all use it, and it's it's such an important image and reality, but image. Bill, can I ask you a question that we skipping gears a little bit? before you were a writer, what were you?
I was a journalist
Okay, for a newspaper,
for
magazine?
the Associated Press, for ESPN.
Okay, what made you think it's time to write a book?
I always wanted to write a book. And I think what I had been doing was I found jobs that allowed me to write, but they weren't pleasing to me. And I
And
thought,
did you always want to write a book about teenagers and gay kids?
I think so. I think that I always wanted to write that story. It was where I was 31 when I made that decision to write the first book. It was still very close to where I was living. So yes.
Haley, wouldn't you say and agree, and I think Bill would, that at 31, the universe got through, that is what Bill's job was at the moment. We're each handmaidens of the universe doing its bidding.
Yeah. And I think it's so many things about this that are so relevant right now. And I think 30, 31 seems to be a sort of key age in sort of our generations to kind of make that switch, or to start sort of saying, what more can I be, or who am I really? Who are you writing your books for now, Bill?
Well, that's an interesting question that's a little hard to answer, because while I still have in mind young audiences, I kind of write my books for me at this point. I kind of write books that I wish that I had when I was younger, or books that are, whilst aimed at a younger audience, are exploring the issues that spiritually I'm exploring today. It's always that.
Yeah.
That's
And
the best stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When I look at the way that I work in a way too that I would be proud of, and that what I needed when I was figuring all of this out. So I think, part of that light and part of shining your light and being unique is being able to say that I am proud of myself, I am proud of my journey, and in honoring that, I am going to actually live it my way and tell it my way, because I think that's what makes it unique. That's what makes it speak to people, and goes back to that age-old idea of resonance. It's going to resonate with so many different people. Some it may help, some may connect, and some it might take 5 years where they just remember this book and then they'll be like, okay, now I'm ready to read it. But I think the key there is that even though it's a book about different characters, your energy is still very much in that book. And I think it's the same with your writing too, Brian. All of your books feel like you, even though they are slightly different in each one of them.
I was talking to a friend yesterday who said, he reminded me of something I had said to him about when younger people read something that you wrote many years ago, they can get upset that you're not in the same place. For instance, my earliest books included a lot about being a faithful Catholic as a gay man. And young gay Catholics, when reading it, see a role model and then discover that I'm not identified as Catholic anymore. And there can be hurt and anger that, wait a second, you need to be where you were.
That sense of betrayal, like.
Yeah, I need you where you were right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's the power of words. I mean, when you write a book, I never thought about this before I wrote a book, but it's eternal. Somebody recently talked to me about Out of the Pocket, the book that my first novel, which came out 12 years ago. And I wanted to laugh because it's so not where I am anymore, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, it's simply, I mean, I see you, and no, that's a very interesting point, what you're saying about that. I hear that, yeah.
Bill, among young adult writers, talks about himself as Mama Bear or Papa Bear.
Papa Bear.
Papa, okay. Well, listen, with all the gender bending, and non-binary thinking.
I'll take it.
Let's just say you're the parenting bear. And by that, he he reacted strongly when somebody on a panel of young adult writers, I think, questioned why are we appealing to gay kids? Is that right, Bill? It was something that was not supportive.
It was Trumpian stuff.
Yeah.
So she went off on Black kids, on LGBT kids, and it was on a panel in front of young people. And I had an opportunity a couple days later to give a keynote speech. And at first we dealt with it on the panel. We had quite a heated discussion, but then I had the opportunity to deal with it conference wide. And I think that was a good thing to do, or at least that's in hindsight.
Well, it may be how one person remembers you and is impacted by you for the rest of their life. And it may not be what you said, but that you said it, that you stood up against oppression.
It's so interesting that we're talking about this, because just when we were talking about being 30 and that being a period of maybe change, I've just turned 50 and I'm going through another change. And the book that I'm working on now isn't for young readers. It's about a 50-year-old man living in Fort Lauderdale. And it's about what it means to be a mature gay man. And I am incredibly fearful of just what you're talking about, of people needing me to be one place. And what if I want to talk about sex, which I do? How will my librarian friends who have been sharing my books feel if suddenly there's a book that isn't for their kids? So I'm really on that wavelength right now, thinking a lot.
It resonates wholly with me, Bill, because this is a struggle that I have almost weekly. I'm a rebel when it comes to a box. So if somebody tries to put me into a box, if somebody tries to ask me, what's your personality type? I immediately just want to rebel and become an activist and say, see me, look at me. I can be whoever I want to be. And I think it is incredibly scary. I don't know the answer yet. I think it comes in us exploring how we get our way through this and get on the other side of this journey, in terms of how did you define yourself without any boxes, and how did you move between boxes so freely and so gently? Because I get put in a lot of boxes. Everybody wants to kind of say, all right, you're a spiritual person, you're a new age person, you're a religious person, you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're in the middle, make up your mind. And it's just, I like I say, on a weekly basis, I have a conversation where I'm like, I'm just in the middle. I'm happy to go and look in the box and spend some time in that box, but then I want to have the freedom of moving around, of exploring exactly who I am. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a book when you turn 60 about sort of that 10-year period in between, of what that journey was about, in terms of honoring that unique light and having the courage to shine it wherever you wanted to shine it.
Before Haley and I met, she thought of herself as Haley Evans, and I helped her understand that she was a drag queen whose name was Clairvoyant.
It's one of my proudest moments. It really is. But
she had never heard of it.
Yeah. There's another label for you. No, I'm kidding.
Well, and I'm struggling at 73 this month to decide what is it that I want to write next. I know there's a book coming, but and one of the things that helped Bill from the beginning of the program, our conversation, you saying, what is it that I wish that I heard myself? And that's really what guided my earliest writing was, and desperately wanting to communicate with the other young Bryans out there that they were okay, that they were good just the way they are.
To both of you, I have a question. when people read your books and you receive feedback from them, when you receive that feedback in terms of you really changed my life, or this is exactly what I needed to hear, how well do you take that in? So I guess first to you, Bill, how easy it is for you to accept that, and then also to sort of be in that place of gratitude. How do you get there?
I think that from growing up gay in the 1980s, I have a sort of innate low self-esteem that will never go away completely. And so my initial reaction is so often self-denigrating. But beyond that, there is a way in which I'm able to take that in and enjoy it. I certainly have no problem letting it go. Like, I don't think like that on a daily basis. I never think, you know, the lovely things that are said are just lovely, and I never go back to them. But I know that they're there, and that's lovely. What about you,
How
Brian?
about for you, Brian?
Well, Haley, I really liked your affirmations that you said you say 3 times daily of, you know, I honor what I have done, and honor what I'm doing, and honor what I will be doing. Is that the right wording?
I honor who I have been, who I am now, and who I am becoming.
When I like that. And I honor with gratitude how I have been used. And I really, this is the way I respond to people who write and say, you know, you changed my life. And, you know, I'll say, you know, I was the right guy at the right time in the right place. And the universe used me, and I'm really, really glad, because that was the intended effect. I don't personalize it. And you know, we talked last, when Haley and I were last together, Bill, we were talking about the influence of religion on who we are. And, you know, growing up Catholic, we were discouraged from having prideful moments.
Right.
And even in our home, I think if you got too big for your britches, it wasn't long before you got knocked off your horse. And I think all of us sort of wait for that to happen, that if we dare accept accolades, that as soon as we do, like I've told Haley the story, when I was in 7th grade, a nun, the principal, announced in front of my entire class as we were getting ready to leave for home, Brian McNaught, you do not create quite the impression you think you do. And, you know, people were aghast, and some of the girls giggled, and I think in embarrassment with me. A visiting nun had thought that I was flippant, apparently. I was always respectfully flippant, but like Haley, you know, I don't put me in a box, because I can't sit still for very long. But you know, that echoes, I think, in all of our ears, is that just as soon as we think that it's going to be okay to say thank you, you know, I really feel, you know, that maybe God is really using me. Well, who in the hell do you think you are?
You are.
Do you think God is not using everybody? Do you think you're so special, mister?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you think, oh, okay, I'm never going to put myself in that position, because it's a lot harder falling than it is climbing. Yeah. So, no.
But I think too, you know, in our journeys, have we got so used to the struggle of the climb that that's our comfort zone now?
I think it's a great question. Bill, why don't you respond first?
You know, this pandemic period has been challenging for me. And for once in my life, I think one of the outcomes of that challenge is that for once in my life, I have found my comfort zone not that way. That my comfort zone has simply been being, which is very unlike me. I have definitely felt that way most of my life, about growing. I don't know. I wonder if I'm alone in that, but this has taken me for a mental ride for certain. I don't feel completely like myself. Brian, what about you?
I get a high out of the challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it's done, I get a letdown. You know, I mean, even reducing it to the example of gardening, you know, I'll come up with a project, or decorating. I'll come up with an idea, and there's great excitement in conceptualizing it and then actualizing it. But once it's done, I need something else to challenge me.
I know that about you.
Yeah.
I was just thinking earlier about how it was maybe a year or two ago, probably 2 years ago, you were really talking about the thing that was interesting to you was helping people pass, helping people move on, you know, to the other side, however, for whatever form that takes. And I thought that was very much like what you're talking about, that you get a new project, you get something new, and you're striving. And I really admire that about you.
Well, thanks. What happens for me, and it happened on transgender issues, you know, several years ago, I thought, all right, you've done this gay thing for, you know, forever. You've told your story a million times. Not that I'm going to stop, but what is it that you'd really like to get good at? And the two things that came up for me were transgender issues or death and dying. So I did transgender issues, and I feel like I'm accomplished in that. I feel like transgender people trust me, that I'm going to accurately represent, thoughtfully represent what the issue is about. And so then, well, let's do death and dying. So I've been, you know, busy reading as much as I can about death, life after death experiences, and aging, and, you know, what's the most important thing you can do for somebody who is declining. And but the funny thing though is that you can't really volunteer to do that right now, you know, with COVID, because one, you if you go into the hospital, you have to have credentials. Really, they're not going to let somebody who thinks, even my laminated minister card that I got on the internet for $79, which allows me to marry people, doesn't allow me to bury them. And I think Haley knows this. I do have a card that I came up with that says, if you're dying, call Brian. You know, I'm joking, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, don't joke. I think that could be something.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, but with COVID and being confined at home, you know, my projects really have been the house. Yeah. You know, reading on the death and dying, listening to audio tapes, but also, okay, let's get into this garden. Let's make friends with it. We need to grow vegetables and herbs. I need some fruit trees.
I think, you know, my answer to that question, and I do want to segue on something else that Brian was talking about, but, you know, I have defined my value through the struggle. The thicker the struggle, the deeper it is, the most painful it is, I feel more worthy of life. And I'm at the point now where I feel like I kind of get to breathe a little bit. Oh. And I'm trying to learn how to breathe without waiting for that next mountain to appear, to sort of just sit on top of the mountain and be, this is beautiful. I'm not going to fall off just yet. I've checked my rope 5 times. But, you know, it is a challenge for me to be able to sit there and say, actually, I'm okay. I can start. Is it safe for me to start dreaming bigger now?
With that in mind, Haley and Bill, in watching the inauguration, this is just an example of self-esteem. And you saw Lady Gaga, after she did such an incredible job singing the national anthem, go sit down. And then you saw a little later Pete Buttigieg and his partner, Christian, sitting there. And did you think, I'd like to be sitting up there? I'd like to sit next to Lady Gaga I can talk to Michelle. I'd know how to carry on a conversation. You know, uh, is it okay for us to see ourselves flying or running with the big dogs, or flying at the head of the V of the Canada geese?
Oh boy,
I think that this is what this year is about.
really?
Getting
Yeah.
comfortable with the truth. Excuse Mexico right there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's getting comfortable with how big your light really is. Your light isn't just a flashlight that moves where you move. Your light is as big as the sun. And I think part of the challenge now, and it sounds like we're all sort of approaching that, phase in different ways, in terms of, are you comfortable now, or start getting comfortable with sitting in a much bigger light? And I think, Bill, your career seems to be trying to gently and subtly sort of push you that way. And I think it's the same for you, Brian, sort of trying to subtly push you into that way of, okay, now start looking at the other things you want to do.
Mm-hmm. And the gifts you have.
Yeah.
This makes me think of something that comes up every time I sit down to write something new, which is that, the ballad of J. Alfred Prufrock, is that what it's called? The T.S. Eliot poem. I'm going to paraphrase, but it's about, who am I to disturb the universe? That quote always comes up. And that quote for me can go in two different directions. And I love what I'm hearing, this idea about our light being bigger and accepting that and moving into that. I find that I waver on it. And I think one of the reasons that Brian is a mentor to me is because I feel like Brian has something I want in that way. Like I see Brian handling that in a way that I would like to handle that in 10 years.
And you are.
I'm trying.
But, one of the things I said to Bill Haley is that, not every Facebook friend will write and say, can we meet? He asked for what he wanted.
Yeah, sure.
And he, when we do that, we have to be able to hear no. But he got yes,
and that's able to hear no and able to hear the yes.
Yeah. And the yes was a gift to me. I always go into this, thinking, okay, say yes to everything. I mean, if it comes up, say yes, find out what's going on, leave a window open so you can get out if you have to, but say yes. And because I think we keep getting called to our greatness, our illumination, and we only will reach it if we acknowledge our intuition and value it as authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, our greatness is always in the best case scenario.
Say more about that.
We think our greatness is in how we manage the dark times. But I think the true test of one's character, the true test of how much one believes in light and in their own light, is how they manage the greatness, how they exist in the greatness, and how they are authentic in the greatness. So I think where it's almost more scary to think about the best case scenario and how can I be in the best case scenario than to focus on the worst case scenario, because you're really good at it already. I know how to plan for the worst case scenario. It doesn't, really doesn't take a whole lot of effort. You've got it. We've all got it sort of ingrained in us now. It's almost like a rewind, play. But when we ask the question, what's the best case scenario? How do you stay humble, Bill, when your show is on Amazon Prime and you have people knocking on your door, Netflix and all these other studios saying, write something for us, or can we turn this book? Mm-hmm. Are you still going to be humble Brian that is, having that question, is it okay for me to be in a different box?
Wow. Probably the most challenging, humble moment of my life Brian talked about that speech that I made, and what came out of that was that the organization, which is the National Council of Teachers of English, created something called the Bill Konigsberg Award. So there is now a biannually given award for inclusion and advocacy for young adults. And that was a tough one because that's a light shining, you know, and we've been talking about words like legacy. And I was very mindful when that happened of just that, like, how do I want to handle this? And I think my best way of handling it is simply to acknowledge, enjoy, be in the moment, and then let go.
Yeah.
Because we have to let go, because that's where the ugliness comes in. If we just, don't you know who I am?
Well, we cling to expectations that this award has a meaning for others. It might not at all. I mean, it was nice for you. Not many people in the world will have an award named after them. So it's a great honor. You know, you hope that it's ongoing.
Yeah.
That, you know, they don't drop it. I mean, people create these awards and then you never hear from them again. You know, what happened to that award you used to give out? Oh, our donors didn't like it. So, you know, I got this award last year at Stonewall, this, you know, legacy award. And, you know, I said, if I could break this into 1,000 pieces, I'd give each one of you a piece of it, because, you know, it's our legacy together, this, how we changed coming out together. And actually, I'm giving the award right back to Stonewall, because I just threw away a lot of my awards. You know, they were cluttered. I mean, it doesn't mean that it wasn't wonderful getting them. I loved it. I was honored, but I don't want to dust them. And I think we have to have that kind of relationship with the honor that we're given. Now, I'm grateful that, you know, there's not an award in my name, because Bill, you have to behave yourself. I don't. You can't. People just say, they name an award after you, Bill. You better not talk like that.
Well,
right,
the beauty
Haley?
of that is you can create a new award.
Yeah.
Have competing awards.
Yeah. Go to another group.
I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of that concept of death, and especially in your book, Bill, you know, the bridge, people, you know, they're on the bridge contemplating death, and what does sort of death look like after death? How important was it to you to be able to explore that from a personal perspective?
I'm like Brian in that I am fascinated with reading about near-death experiences. It's one of the most exciting areas for me. I mean, we all have our personal beliefs. In that book, I was much more involved in exploring life, and that has to do with the audience, because teenagers are so susceptible. And all I wanted to say was, stay another day, stay another day. I know firsthand how hard it is when we're depressed. Sometimes we just want to find out what is on the other side. We want to let go. And it's such a tragic time for everyone involved. So this wasn't that book exactly, but I think I could live in writing a book about the other side. I mean, I could spend my time just focused there and be very happy.
How important, what are the sort of, you know, as you go from the transition of, which I think is a really important book, into something that, to your point, somebody else is reading it and creating a script of it, what are sort of the key things that you want to maintain so you can say that it's still authentic? That transfer of sort of power has been authentic.
It was very important to me that I had a good conversation with this young man. He approached us. He read the book and he said, I have to write the screenplay. And he is somebody who's written, his most recent one stars Angelina Jolie, so he's doing well. But his interest helped first, but you know, certain things are just non-starters. a sensitivity about mental illness and suicide are important, obviously. Like that book, that movie I would disavow if it became flashy, you know. And what I really like is that he wants it to be gritty, and I'm in, you know. I want this to be not shiny and pretty and fluffy about what suicide is. I want it to be gritty.
Yeah. I have the wonderful experience of working with a crew of college student children, not children. I call them children because they are so young, but they're kids. They're all like 19, 20, 21. And in November, their friend committed suicide. And from this one event, I'm now working with this wonderful circle of college students that are now questioning, who are they? What is my light? How can I be unique in my light? And, you know, we had these experiences when we were 30. So when I see these kids doing it at like 19 and 20, it fills me with so much hope. But it is important for me to remember, and, you know, in my journey of helping them understand the suicide has been very raw, very gritty, and allowing them to sit in the grittiness of it and the rawness of it, which I think we don't allow ourselves that time.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the healing is sitting in that rawness, that grittiness, that just god awful nastiness of, you know, when there is that kind of turmoil in a young person's life or anybody's life. So I think it's comforting to know that you know, this book exists, that they are making these shows about it. But I think the healing absolutely is in the rawness, the grittiness of it.
I spoke to some grief counselors while writing this book. I did a lot of research, and one thing that was said, and this is about people who survive a loved one's suicide, she talked about how we don't get over it, we just rearrange our life around it. I thought that was very powerful. I haven't experienced that with a close loved one, so that wasn't something I could speak to, but that made sense to me, that it's just always there.
And I think,
go ahead. Nope.
I was just going to say, I'm fascinated with death from a very sort of energetic perspective because of what I have been shown, and especially having this wonderful experience of this young man's suicide and actually being able to connect with him and hear his side of it, but then also see the very human side of what is left behind. Yeah. Is this concept that death is final, that it is, you know, death is a life, and you don't just, to that point, the people that are left behind don't just get to say, right, that door's closed. It's still open. That life, that energy is still around. It doesn't just snuff. The light is not snuffed.
Yeah, I believe
that. Saying that to people who have lost somebody, it takes a while for them to hear it, because in some ways, I think they may feel that you're diminishing their loss by saying, well, he's still here, you know, talk to him.
It's,
you know, it takes a while to, as Bill said, arrange your life around the reality, and then accept the possibility that you can have an ongoing relationship with the person. You know, yeah, you have to be so careful when somebody dies, and you know the person who survived, and you know the person who died, and you're writing a letter, and it's not suicide. Often it's just cancer, or whatever it is. Writing to the person and wanting to say something meaningful, not my thoughts and prayers, you know, something meaningful to them. I find that you have to be careful how you say it, the strength with which you say it, the conviction. I think you offer it gently to them, as a possibility, so that they can take it in without having their defenses up.
I think
Does
there's
that
a great
ring true?
responsibility in being a messenger, especially when, we're talking about death. And there's always, we always like to see death from our perspective, how we're feeling about it. And then we project that on how you think somebody would feel better by hearing your words.
Right.
So in delivering that message of comfort, it's always waiting to see where they are. This, again, is my experience, is seeing what they're ready for. Because there's always time to deliver so many messages, but it's really, what do they need right now? And sometimes, in my experience, it has been those family members that just needed to know that that past member was okay, was safe, was, happy. Others have wanted to know the full story and get really mad and say, how could this happen? And how could you choose this? Do you know what you left behind? And then there have been some who are just simply not ready to hear anything about it. And I think part of being that responsible message of a death is being able to say, that's okay. You get to be whatever stage you're at, and you get to say and feel what's you feeling, get it out, show people what it is. And sometimes, there's great power in silence.
Yes. Yes.
Except that I want to know that somebody is at least aware of, what I'm going through, and is taking the time to at least send a note to say, I'm really sad.
I acknowledge it. Yeah.
I acknowledge what happened. Yeah.
Or simply, I know there's nothing I can say that can comfort, but I'm thinking of you. I love you, just words of comfort. But I'm interested in what that must be like, Haley, to have those conversations when people are ready. That just fascinates me.
It's death is a very stunning subject for me. I've had near-death experiences, and now I have had the opportunity more than once to help people deal with a death experience. And without fail, in every one of those instances, it was beautiful. It was full of light. There's so much more to the story than what we think that there is. And it's always beautiful, and it's always, always, always love. Always. Nobody's angry. The person, who is left behind may feel anger in their grief, but it's because they loved, and that's beautiful. And I think in acknowledging that it's because of love really softens a lot of that sort of anger and that fear and that what next.
I wonder, I was thinking about, Haley, that somebody might come to you because they see clairvoyance, they see, that they've heard that you're able to communicate with people beyond this realm. I think that I feel that I've had the opportunity to do the same. But I think that sharing with somebody the thoughts of somebody who has passed requires that the person who is doing the sharing, you, me, whatever, has experienced in our own life love in its purest form. Because it's that life experience of vibrating, at the highest level possible for whatever moments we were able to, that we trust that those who have passed are now at this level, at least in terms of awareness. So we can give witness to it because we've experienced it. We can say, no. They are forgiving. They want you to be happy. it was too much for them. There's no guilt involved, because on our own, through whatever, life experience we've had, because the universe has brought us, and we've spent time with the intention of understanding the meaning of it, that it's easier to speak with confidence about what's being said from the other side, because what's being said from the other side can be experienced here. Does that make, am I making sense to you?
Absolutely makes sense. And when I'm connecting with those energies that have gone on to the other side, it's such a high vibration, and it is such pure, unconditional love that I can't do anything but smile. I'm sitting there going like, this is beautiful. I wish you could see how beautiful this is. But there is also that responsibility of being very aware that the person that is left behind is far, far, far below that level.
Right.
So it's very, again, is that responsibility and being able to, for lack of a better word, bridge those two worlds to deliver the message in a way that helps the person that is still in a human body.
Right. To bridge the high and the low vibration.
Yeah. And I think that's where sometimes it can get really difficult, because you want to ease that person's suffering. You want them to feel what you see, but they just can't. They can't see it. So as much as you try and tell them this person's happy and it's full of love and it's full of light, there are moments where you really just have to say, I know you can't see this right now, but let's talk about you. Let's talk about what you can see. And sometimes they can only see the loneliness that is left behind.
Right. Well, and accepting where somebody is a form of connecting that certainly can move towards that other.
And it does. I have experienced that it does move. Just allowing yourself to sit with them in that lonely room and just be like, you know what? You're going to be lonely. It sucks. But I'm just going to sit here with you. And when you're ready to sort of look up and see a light, let's talk about that then. So I've, had experiences where, the first call, within 15 minutes, the person said, we're completely on two different planes. You don't get what I'm going through. And I've just said, you know what, you're right. Sit with it. And I'll check in with you in a week and let's see how you're doing then. And it's taken sort of 3 discussions or conversations for them to kind of move on to the edge now, where they're willing to just be willing to open to the possibility to that pure unconditional love. And that's the joy too. And sort of helping people through this death experience. It's not just one conversation. There's a lot of unwinding that is required to be able to get people comfortable with another concept of death.
I growing up Catholic, and this is going back to an earlier moment in our conversation when we talked about accepting that we have gifts, affirming them. Growing up Catholic, they talked about the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost. And the Holy Ghost is just another way for me of, the Buddha within, the force is strong within you, the light, the universe. But the gifts are wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, piety, and the last is fear of the Lord. I let go of that one because I don't think, there's fear. Now, I don't. Yeah, I think they threw that one to scare people. But if we work on if we prioritize our spiritual path and look to every experience for its truth for us, pleasant or unpleasant, what are we growing from? I think the result is the gifts that I just mentioned: wisdom, understanding, counsel, the ability to counsel, fortitude, knowledge, piety. What is piety? No, I think piety is humility.
I was going to say, that's what I think.
Yeah. And so I think those gifts are available to us. All of them. All of us.
Yeah.
All the time. I don't think you just say, okay, I'm ready, let me have it. I think it's a spiritual practice. You practice. But as you practice and get older, there's a confidence that comes. You know, it's like when the Scarecrow was given a diploma by the Wizard of Oz. You know, he suddenly, you know, was reciting geometry. An experience helped him. Going to Europe, you know, as an American when you're younger, you come back with a sense of sophistication you didn't have before you left, right? Same thing with learning another language. Experience helps us become comfortable with the gifts that we have that are available to us. And so when someone asks us, I think, about the other side, it's those gifts that we've already accessed that allows us to say, you know, this is where they are. You know?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's legacy, no?
That, it makes sense?
Yes.
And well, it's certainly the legacy of the Holy Spirit.
And a legacy that we would all be proud to have.
Embraces our own.
Embraces our own. And it's kind of like another paradox, you know, if you do believe that you are the Holy Spirit or the Holy Spirit is within you, then you are already part of your legacy. And it is just standing into that greater big light and being your legacy rather than waiting to leave it.
With humility.
Part of the legacy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sounds like a pretty fun journey we're all on.
I think it's very exciting. It is. It's very exciting, and it's you keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper understandings, and I mean, it's not like they're all happening at the same time, but they keep getting reinforced.
Yeah.
I mean, when Amanda was 22, is she? Gorman was reading her poem, and you think there's such great wisdom coming out of this young mind. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's not something that only happens when you hit 73, right? There are old souls that for some reason, right? And that's what we and everyone else who is celebrating their gifts, I think are doing is affirming the messages that we've received and putting them in words that other people can have as reinforcement that, yes, you're right. You're on the right track. Does that resonate?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah. Boy, this is one of those beautiful glimpses. For me, these are just glimpses where I get glimpses of grace and then I forget for a couple of days.
We all
do.
Yeah, it's the coming together, I think. Where two or three are gathered, it's the coming together that creates the energy often, the reflective. That's what happened with Haley and me. We met by chance, really. Somebody who Haley has had as a client was an old acquaintance, a friend. I think of him as friend, but we met years and years ago on a trip. He bought me a session with Haley because he thought it would be good for me, given where he thought I was based upon my Facebook posts. And we met, and it was great. And then I think I sent you a column or two, and then you said, why don't we talk? You want to talk? And I thought, well, I have to pay for it.
But it was the same, Bill, you sending a message to Brian where I was like, what if he says no? He could say yes.
and we started talking, and I said, we should be recording this. This is good stuff, because there was good energy. And that's, I think, what happens when, you know, you're on the, you're climbing the mountain and you're sitting down at a fire with other people who have climbed to the same level, and you're sharing stories.
Yep.
And then one of you says, I need to keep going. I'll see you up there. You know?
Yeah.
I'll be right there.
And I think what's really, really important today is sharing the authenticity of it, the nitty-gritty, the rawness of it, because so often is this journey made into a movie like Eat, Pray, Love, where everybody thinks, oh, you just go to Rome and to Bali and then you get back and oh my God, look how great life is. So being able to have these conversations where it's like, yeah, it is kind of a little bit like that, but really this is actually what it means to be like this every single day. This is, you know, the stuff that we talk about, the stuff that we think about, the stuff that we're worried about, you know, and it's really important that people hear that now.
And sometimes we don't succeed. Sometimes we fail a lot, you know, we fail. But the great thing is that when we fail, we know we failed, right? We catch ourselves and say, I wish I had handled that differently. That's, you know, that's not the person I want to be.
And the fall is not as great.
And the fall is not as great, you said?
When we fail, I feel like at this point, if I do fail at something, I'm not falling all the way down to step one or the start. I'm falling sort of maybe 5 steps back.
Right. Righting the ship and saying, okay, let's try.
Yeah, and then it's like, all right, let's get back up.
Yeah,
and laugh.
And laugh instead of beat ourselves up with shame when we fail, to laugh and say, well, look at you.
I think that's one of the greatest points of humility, is being able to laugh at yourself and being able to laugh at your journey. Well, guys, we're a little bit over.
Okay.
So I think that's a wonderful point to stop on, is laugh at your journey.
Laugh. Yep.
Laugh.
And celebrate, you know, the energy that flows between us and between us and others. I mean, it happens all the time if we allow it.
Absolutely. How about you, Bill? Any last thoughts?
Oh, just joy. You know, I feel joyful having spent this hour with you. I feel very lucky. So thank you.
Me too.
Me too. And just again, it's Bill Konigsberg, and his newest book is called The Bridge. Bill, just take a second, tell us the titles of your other books.
The other books include The Music of What Happens, Openly Straight and Honestly Ben, which is a duology, Out of the Pocket, and The Porcupine of Truth.
Wow.
I so look forward to reconnecting again and seeing where we're at and what we're going to talk about then.
Wonderful. I'll look forward to it. So nice to see you all.
Bye,
a
you guys.
wonderful week, guys, and we'll speak soon.
Peace. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.